From Lagos, the nation's commercial capital, this is the News at 10. Live from Channels Television. Reporting tonight, Amarachi Ubani.
Tonight, over 10 people killed in separate attacks in 3 local government areas of Kaduna State as parents of kidnapped Bethel Baptist school students cry out for the rescue of their children. Abducted students and staff of Nuhu Bamali Polytechnic, also in Kaduna, freed from captivity as bandits kill at least 35 people in Zamfara State. Meeting between the federal government and the medical doctors as well as other health professionals to fix a new hazard allowance ends without a consensus. And authorities in Haiti say a group of 28 foreign mercenaries, including retired Colombian soldiers, assassinated the country's president, Jovenel Moise. Plus, business, sports, news from Abuja, and later international news from a London studio.
On business news tonight, African finance ministers urge G20 to speed up access to IMF funds in order to boost post-pandemic development in Africa.
On sports news tonight, Novak Djokovic sails into the 2021 Wimbledon Championship final after defeating Denis Shapovalov in the semi-final.
And from the nation's capital, Vice President Yemi Osinbajo promises a more effective approach in actualizing the federal government's plan to lift 100 million citizens out of poverty in 10 years.
The attacks on communities in the northwest part of the country continues, with the latest occurring today in 3 local government areas of Kaduna State, where over 10 people are said to have been killed. Just before that incident came news of the release of the students or staff of Nuhu Bamali Polytechnic from bandits' captivity, also in Kaduna, but that seemed to have been overtaken by news of the killing of at least 35 people in Zamfara attack. In the meantime, parents of the 120 students of Bethel Baptist Secondary School are still calling for the rescue of their children and praying for God's intervention. But we begin in Kaduna State, where bandits have again killed at least 10 persons in 3 local government areas of Kaduna State. 9 of the victims were killed at Workin Village in Zagon Kataf local government area, while 1 person was also killed in a similar attack at Kakao area in Chinku local government area. The State Commissioner for Internal Security and Home Affairs, Samuel Aruwan, says security agencies equally reported that some persons lost their lives after another set of bandits attacked Kibori, Katsit and Afana, all in Zagon Kataf local government area, and Amanakasua in Igabi local government area within the week. Mr. Aruwan adds that 5 youths from Kafanchan town in Jema local government area are still missing, with their whereabouts unknown. And in Zamfara State, at least 35 people have been killed by bandits in 5 communities in Faro District. In Maradun local government area of the state, the affected communities are Sauni, Gidan Baushe, Gidan Adamu, Gidan Wari, and Gidan Maidawa. According to a resident in the area, the bandits, who were riding over 100 motorcycles, stormed the community around 11 in the morning of Thursday, sporadically shooting and killing over 40 persons in the process. Meanwhile, the 6 students and 2 members of staff of Nuhu Bamali Polytechnic in Zaria in Kaduna State were kidnapped by bandits, have been released. They were released last night at an undisclosed location in Kaduna. The public relations officer of the Polytechnic, Abdullahi Shehu, says the kidnapped students and staff secured their freedom after their parents and relatives negotiated with the bandits. He, however, did not say specifically if any ransom was paid or not. But the bandits had on June 14, 2021, attacked Nuhu Bamali Polytechnic in Zaria, Kaduna State, and kidnapped victims from their hostels and the staff headquarters. To other stories now, the federal government's meeting with medical doctors and other health professionals on how to fix a new hazard allowance for workers in the health sector has ended without a consensus, as a meeting adjourned indefinitely, pending when parties in the negotiations harmonize their demands. The Minister of Labour and Employment, Chris Ngige, says members of the Joint Health Care Workers Union, JOHISU, and the Nigeria Medical Association need more time, just as the federal government also needs time to study the new proposals from the health workers.
This is the fourth time that the Presidential Committee on Hazard Allowance for medical doctors and other healthcare professionals are meeting at the banquet hall to fix a new allowance for the health workers. Although proposals have been made and considered, it is clear that a resolution is still not in sight.
Our point still remains that whatever is applicable to that core health salary that was a product of collectively bargained agreement, which the hazard allowance was part of the ingredients that made it up. So be it, that is the principle on which we are standing.
We want to point out very clearly that the risks are not the same. The risk we face are as varied as our various profession. And we must accept that as it is.
The health workers are running out of patience. Fresh ultimatum has been given, but this is not going down well with the government.
You don't issue ultimatum while you're on a discussion and then bring in extraneous things that are not pertinent to the discussion. This discussion is for hazard allowance. You don't issue us ultimatum. But if you want to persist on your ultimatum, if you go on strike, we apply our own cane. We have something to protect the employer with.
The meeting, which later entered into closed door, ended after about 2 hours of deliberations, with parties not reaching a consensus.
The proposals they have submitted differs, and they are not able to harmonize now. A quantum of money, that's 7.5 billion. That's what it comes to. We are adjourning sine die for the government side to also look at those two positions, see whether we can do a middle of the road.
The committee to review health workers' risks allowances was inaugurated in the wake of the pandemic last year, when health workers threatened to down tools over a 5,000 naira monthly hazard allowance, which they say was grossly inadequate. 1 year after, those issues continue to threaten the stability of the Nigeria's health sector.
We return to insecurity in Kaduna State as distraught parents of the 121 students abducted from Bethel Baptist Secondary School in Chikun local government area held a prayer session to seek God's intervention for the rescue of their children. The students were abducted from their hostels by bandits on Monday. At the prayer meeting, the president of the Nigerian Baptist Convention asked government and security agencies to step up efforts to protect lives and property of citizens from bandits.
It's been 4 days now since the 121 students of Bethel Baptist Secondary School in Chikun local government area of Kaduna State were taken away by bandits to an unknown destination. The gunmen had stormed the school in the early hours of Monday and broke into the school hostel and abducted the students. 2 security operatives lost their lives while trying to repel the bandits.
What will I tell her? What will I tell her?
Following the incident, parents of the students have been gathering at the school awaiting updates about the whereabouts of their children. Friday's gathering is a unique one as the parents, dressed in black, hold an emotional prayer session for several hours seeking God's intervention. Some of the grieving mothers also weep on the heap of footwears left behind by their children, hoping that no harm will befall them while in captivity. President of the Nigerian Baptist Convention, Reverend Israel Akonji, leads the prayers, which he describes as their only hope and refuge. He says Governor Nasir El-Rufai has given the assurance of ongoing efforts to rescue the students.
We have called on the executive governor of Kaduna State to ensure that these children are released. And when I spoke with him, he made a promise that he will do his best. We are looking up to God to touch the governor and use the security agencies to bring our children. We are not looking at paying ransom as the way of the release of the children.
Despite the assurance, the cleric insists that government's effort is not good enough.
The federal government and the Kaduna State government, they may be saying that they are doing their best, but my assessment is that their best is not enough. Manpower has not been really sufficient. Also, we have seen from the banditry things that have been experienced that the bandits, a lot of times, they overpower our own security.
An estimated 950 students have been abducted by armed bandits between last year and now in the northern part of the country, with many of such incidents occurring in the northwest zone.
Praying for the safe return of the children as well. The federal government is proposing a one-year time limit for the full return of its artifacts from Germany. According to a statement from the media assistant to the Minister of Information and Culture, Mr. Segun Adeyemi, Germany has agreed to repatriate hundreds of antiquities which were looted from the Benin Kingdom in 1897. The statement further says the Minister of Information and Culture, Lai Mohammed, is leading a Nigerian government delegation for high-level talks with German government officials on the repatriation of the artifacts. It noted there are 1,130 Benin bronzes in various museums in Germany. Meanwhile, His Royal Majesty, the Oba of Benin, Eware II, is asking the federal government to initially take custody of these soon-to-be repatriated looted Benin artifacts when they are returned to Nigeria, pending the establishment of the Benin Royal Museum. The Benin monarch maintains that the rightful destination of the looted Benin bronzes, when repatriated, will be the Benin Royal Museum, to be sited within the precincts of the Royal Palace, and not the state government's recently unveiled planned Edo Museum of West Africa Arts, EMOA. This was contained in a statement that the Iyase of Benin Kingdom, Chief Sam Igbe, read on behalf of the Oba of Benin. During a meeting, the Oba called to address issues surrounding the appropriate destination and custody of the looted artifacts when returned to Nigeria.
The institutions that house them, the museums.
It was at this gathering, the closing of the 2021 annual retreat for management staff and curators of the National Commission for Museums and Monuments, that the Edo State Governor, Mr. Godwin Obaseki, recently gave a presentation on the planned Edo Museum of West Africa Arts, EMOA. Weeks later, His Royal Majesty Omonoba Nedu Kwakpolokpolo Ewe II, Oba of Benin, calls this meeting with palace chiefs, Enigi, royal family members, as well as youth leaders. He addresses his chiefs first in Benin. Pictorial evidence is shared about the return of some looted artifacts in 2013. The actual artworks are also presented, highlighting their safety in their original home. The Benin monarch, in a statement read on his behalf, explains that the advocacy and demands for return of the looted artifacts had been on for decades before the emergence of Mr. Godwin Obaseki as governor of Edo State. While he thanks the governor for joining in the struggle, the Oba is clear on the appropriate destination for the artifacts.
I want to note that attempts to divert the destination of the right of custody of the artifacts is not in the interest of the Benin Kingdom, to whom the palace of the Oba of Benin provides leadership. The looted artifacts awaiting repatriation from Europe are the cultural heritage of the Benin Kingdom, created by our ancestors and forefathers within the traditional norms and rights of the kingdom. They are not property of the state government or any private corporation entity that is not a creation of the Benin Kingdom.
The Oba then makes a request of the federal government.
we wish to use this medium to call on the federal government to take custody of these artifacts on behalf of the palace until the Benin Royal Museum is ready for their collection. Under no circumstances should custody of our age-old artifacts be handed to any privately contrived entity like the Legacy Restoration Trust.
The Palace of the Oba of Benin also advised the Governor of Edo State, Mr. Godwin Obaseki, to review his approach of using the private vehicle of the Legacy Restoration Trust and MOA and see how he can genuinely collaborate with the Palace in accordance with their original understanding. Jessica Luguse, Channels Television News.
In part 2 after the break, the federal government begins implementation of amnesty program for juvenile inmates as part of measures to decongest the nation's correctional centers. Stay with us. Welcome back. If it has joined us to watching the news at 10 live on Channels Television Lagos, a reminder of our top stories. Over 10 people killed in separate attacks in 3 local government areas of Kaduna State as parents of kidnapped Bethel Baptist school students cry out for the rescue of their children. Abducted students of staff of Nuhu Bamali Polytechnic, also in Kaduna, freed from captivity as bandits killed at least 35 people in Zamfara State. Meeting between the federal government and medical doctors as well as other health professionals to fix a new hazard allowance ends without a consensus. And authorities in Haiti say a group of 28 foreign mercenaries, including retired Colombian soldiers, assassinated the country's president, Jovenel Moise. The ECOWAS Court of Justice in Abuja has ordered the federal government to pay journalist Agba Jalingo the sum of 30 million naira as compensation for allegedly ill-treating and torturing him while in detention in Cross River State. The court said in a judgment today that Agba Jalingo was arrested and chained to a deep freezer for about 34 days without being charged to court, brutalized and dehumanized. The Socio-Economic Rights and Accountability Project, SERAP, had on behalf of Mr. Jalingo asked the court for reparations for inhumane treatment and torture meted out to him. The court, however, ruled that the action is against international human rights treaties, particularly the African Charter on Human and People's Rights, to which Nigeria is a state party, and that Nigerian government flouted the provisions of these treaties on international fair trial standards. Mr. Jalingo, who is the publisher of Cross River Watch, was arrested on August 22nd last year over a report alleging that the state governor, Ben Ayade, diverted 500 million naira belonging to the state. Staying with legal matters, the Federal High Court sitting in Lafia, the Nasarawa state capital, has adjourned hearing of the criminal case bordering on terrorism, economic sabotage and abetment of terrorism between the Nigeria police and 30 defendants to July 13th. Justice Nehizena Afolabi adjourned the hearing today after 29 defendants took their pleas. 29 of them, except one who is not in court on grounds of ill health, pleaded not guilty on the 7-count charge against them. Their application for their bail has also not been granted by the court, while the defendants have been remanded at the Lafia Custodial Center until the adjourned date. The Federal Ministry of Justice, in collaboration with the Presidential Committee on Correctional Service Reform and Decongestion, is implementing an amnesty program for juvenile inmates to rehabilitate and reintegrate the qualified ones back into society. The Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice, Abubakar Malami, says this has become pertinent as the over 32 correctional centers visited by the committee are overcrowded and grossly inadequate, leading to juveniles being sent to adult correctional centers. The Ogun State Borsal Institute is next to benefit from the amnesty program.
The second phase commenced in May 2021 with the committee assessment team visiting remand homes and postal institutes in Lagos and Abeokuta in order to target the necessary needs and requirements of the juveniles to be released. The ministry dispatched a team of 4 experts to the Federal Postal Institute of Adigbe, Abeokuta, Ogun State to conduct a profile, need and risk assessment of the juveniles. The assessment exercise took place from 20th to 21st day of May 2021. Details of the challenges observed and recommendations made by the team are contained in the report that was forwarded to the stakeholder institutions. To this end, today's meeting is aimed at organizing a coordinated judicial action with the Honorable Attorney General and Commissioner of Justice Ogun State, Chief Judge of Ogun State, the Commissioner of Social Welfare Department Ogun State, the Comptroller General of the Corrections Ogun State, the Principal of Postal Institute Ogun State, UNODC, UNICEF, Legal Aid Council, FIDA, and CSOs in Ogun State to provide legal and psychological support to released juveniles for proper integration back into the society.
In the meantime, the Ogun State Judicial Panel of Investigation into Brutality and Human Rights Violations by the police and other security agencies has recommended the payment of over 218 million naira to 42 victims or families of victims of brutality and human rights violations in the state. The chairman of the panel, Justice Solomon Olubemi, also recommended for investigation, discipline, and, where appropriate, prosecution of certain security personnel to serve as a deterrent and in the interest of justice. He presented the report to Governor Dapo Abiodun in Abeokuta today.
The panel of investigation was inaugurated on October 19, 2020, and the 278-page document submitted to Governor Dapo Abiodun in 2 volumes paint a gory picture of abuses and human rights violations. In accordance with its terms of reference, the chairman of the panel says it received 106 petitions, out of which 48 were either rejected, withdrawn or abandoned in the course of the proceedings by the petitioners.
After carefully and soberly considering the conditions of victims or of families of deceased victims and the economic situation of the country, the panel has made modest recommendations for payment of a total of 218,848,500 naira as compensation for 42 victims of all families of victims of brutality and violation of human rights by the police and other security personnel in Ogun State.
The Ogun State Governor, Dapo Abiodun, commends the panel for doing a thorough job, promising to implement the recommendations therein.
We appreciate the recommendations of the panel that a copy of this report be forwarded to the Police High Command and the federal government. As a matter of fact, the National Economic Council has already requested that all states submit their report. These will go a long way in deepening the professionalism that is required of the Nigerian police.
The submission of this report may be the first step in ensuring that those who approach the panel get justice.
Meanwhile, it has been the 100th day of sitting at the Lagos State Judicial Panel on restitution for victims of SARS-related abuses and other matters, and it's still business as usual. Today's proceedings, the panel heard the cases between Ayodeji Berkeley and the Nigerian Army. The petitioner alleged that he acted as a security agent on the protest grounds at Lekki Tollgate as another means to fend for his family. He says on the night of the alleged shootings by the Nigerian army on October 20th, news was passed across to his wife that he had died, leading to the loss of their baby.
When my phone got lost, then for me to call my wife home because she was scared. The next day I couldn't, when I just go down, I couldn't find my phone. I now tried part of the guys that I was taking to call home. She said when she called my phone, someone else has picked the phone, that she slumped on the floor. It's someone else that picked the call, that my wife was falling out and she's bleeding, she has miscarriage. So it's one of the things that make me get angry, that what's the essence of even we that we don't have license, that we can as well as a boy to even hustle for our family. Because if I should have money, I won't come and say maybe I'm doing any kind of security for anybody.
Segueing to Rivers State, as Governor Nyesom Wike has rounded off his 6 weeks of project inauguration and flag off to mark his 6th year in office, with the flag off of the construction of a 5.33-kilometer road to 3 local government areas in the state. The governor, however, urged Rivers State indigents to be proud of the state and never play second fiddle to anyone in Nigeria, following the quality of leadership he has provided.
It's been 6 busy weeks for Governor Nyesom Wike of Rivers State as he travels the length and breadth of the state, commissioning and flagging off projects to mark his 6th year in office. He's rounding off his visits in Ogu Town, Ogubolo local government area, to flag off the construction of a 5.33-kilometer road connecting the area to Eleme and Tai local government areas. Benefiting communities roll out their drums to celebrate a project they've been expecting for more than 30 years. For Governor Wike, his administration has set an unprecedented record in delivering uncommon projects without being indebted to any financial institution.
I've called the contractor and I've asked him, when will this road be finished? He said latest December. I said, okay. Tell the Minister of Special Projects to bring their paper for another payment, because I don't want to hear excuses. I want this road. I want to be here Boxing Day. One of us are boxing. We're doing our own boxing by commissioning this road. It is very, very important.
Joining the League of Personalities to flag off projects in Rivers State is a former governor of Ebonyi State, Dr. Sam Egu, who commends Governor Wike's development strides.
Without mincing words, one will agree that the governor is one of, if not the best performing governor in Nigeria today. This is because Rivers State does not have the highest allocation of the federal fund, nor does it have the highest in terms of IGR. But yet, I don't think any governor has performed the feat he has done. Every day we are commissioning projects, and these projects are not mean projects.
The governor is expected to wrap up these series of events next week when he gives an account of his stewardship in the last 6 years.
When the News at 10 returns, the senior pastor of Synagogue Church of All Nations, Prophet T.B. Joshua, is laid to rest in Lagos. Plus, African finance ministers call on the G20 to speed up access to IMF funds to boost post-pandemic development on the continent. That's Welcome back. The remains of the senior pastor of the Synagogue Church of All Nations, Prophet T.B. Joshua, has been laid to rest at the church premises in Lagos. A funeral service organized to celebrate his life and legacy attracted guests from all walks of life, including Governor Rotimi Akeredolu of Ondo State. He eulogized Pastor Joshua for his unfettered show of love and affection during his lifetime.
No other person has ever done that before. And he said to me, that the governor of his state has been elected, but he has come to wish me well, to pray and did everything. And when he was leaving, just like my friend used to say, I had a friend before when he goes somewhere, or they put something in my pocket. He put something in my pocket. When the whole of our northern central district was in darkness, they came to him. The government could not afford. He paid their bill. He said, "You are owing Pastor T.B. Joshua paid." 4 local government areas he paid. This was the only person who died, and the whole town closed market and shop for 1 week.
Prophet Joshua's eldest daughter, Sarah Joshua, also took time to appreciate all who stood by the family and church in their trying times.
I want to thank you all for showing your love and honor to the family of God in the passing of my father. And I also want to thank you for your prayer and support at this moment.
We have news just in. Bandits have attacked another community in Maradun local government area of Zamfara State, where no fewer than 6 persons have been reportedly killed. The armed bandits are said to have invaded Gora Namaye community this afternoon, shooting sporadically, killing 6 persons, injuring several others and setting a car ablaze. Police authorities in the state are yet to confirm the incident. Some communities under Maradun local government area were attacked by armed bandits on Thursday evening, killing over 30 persons. Maradun local government area is home to State Governor Bello Matawale. We'll get more news now from our Abuja studio, where Terry Ikumi is standing by. Hi, Terry.
Hello, Amarachi. The Vice President, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, says previous poverty alleviation plans in the country have not yielded the sort of results they should yield because there is a lot of focus on documentation and paperwork and very little common sense approaches. He stated this while chairing the inaugural meeting of the National Poverty Reduction and Growth Strategy meeting at the State House in Abuja. The meeting had in attendance selected governors from the 6 geopolitical zones, as well as the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, the Ministers of Labour, Trade and Investment, Agriculture and Rural Development, the Minister of Finance and other top government officials who joined the meeting virtually. Speaking to State House correspondents after the meeting, the Governor of Nasarawa State, Abdullahi Sule, explains that the committee is focused on poverty reduction and plans to formulate a growth plan for the country in order to pull 100 million Nigerians out of poverty.
The whole committee is about poverty reduction and growth strategy. And the idea is for the government to be able to take out 100 million Nigerians out of poverty in the next 10 years. So the committee is being chaired by Mr. Vice President and members actually from all the 6 geographical zones, of the governors. And the Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Trade, Ministry of Agriculture, the SGF and the other members. So the whole idea is to sit down first, to look at the terms of reference. That's what we discussed. Then to have the composition of the technical working group that is going to work in all the various areas. and then to review the membership of the technical working group. So those are just the issues that have been discussed for today. And then the next meetings will define when the technical working groups actually will commence work and the scope of their work. We are hoping to meet immediately the week after Salah, so that the steering committee now will be able to clearly define the terms of and the scope of work that will be carried out by the technical working group.
The International Organization for Migration says about 29,000 persons have crossed the Mediterranean Sea in the first 5 months of this year. The individuals include Nigerians and others from sub-Saharan Africa. Addressing a news conference in Abuja, the IOM Chief of Mission, Mr. Franz Celestin, explains that about 13,000 were arrested by the Libyan Coast Guards and returned home, while 761 migrants perished in the sea. He adds that the mission is involved in the biometric registration of children in the Northeast, and that the agency has registered over 17,000 children in 18 different internally displaced persons camps in 29 months, starting from January 2019 to May 2021 in Borno State. Moving on to infrastructure, Governor Abdurrahman Abdurazak of Kwara State has flagged off massive infrastructure projects across 600 schools in the state. A development, he says, has turned a new page in the history of basic education in the state. At a flag-off ceremony in Ote Town, in Asa local government area, the governor said the projects are a combination of the 2014 to 2019 Universal Basic Education Commission SUBEB interventions that got stuck as a result of the previous administration not fulfilling its obligations, as well as diverting the matching grants it received in 2013.
Elerin Jari Secondary School was built over 30 years ago, and alongside many other schools in Kwara State, now suffers infrastructure decay because of neglect.
If the government can come to our aid to assist us, we will very much appreciate it. There's nothing we can do, and there are many to do as regards the school structures. I'm appealing to the state government to come to our aid.
The present administration, led by Governor Abdurrahman Abdurazak, says it's committed to either remodel or reconstruct nearly 600 schools that require attention. The projects include statewide wholesale remodeling of schools, construction of new classrooms, rehabilitation of existing ones, construction of water, sanitation and hygiene facilities, information and communication facilities, and training and retraining of teachers.
As I'm talking to you, the governor has directed that we give instructional materials to various schools in Kwara State. It has never happened. It has never happened. Your Excellency, sir, I deeply appreciate you.
We want to call on...
The governor, who was elated with the event, says the flag-off follows the work plan approved for Kwara by UBEC, where there will be total remodeling of 24 schools to feature classrooms, toilets, libraries, laboratories, and offices. Also to be constructed will be 4 new classrooms each across 61 locations, 3 new classrooms each in 64 locations, and 2 new classrooms each in 116 locations across the state. 89 boreholes will also be dug, and 78 poor flush toilets constructed.
I feel honored to flag off this intervention, which covers 2014, 2016, 2016, 2017, 2018, and 20 interventions. From this, you can see clearly that not much has been done in the education sector since 2013. Now we have to catch up and leapfrog.
If this development is followed through as planned, evident progress will be made in the education sector in Kwara State, with the students and society as the ultimate beneficiaries.
And that's a wrap from the nation's capital. Business News is next with Anne Nwawodo.
Banking, so easy, so simple. Dial *894# now to experience it. You first, First Bank.
Thank you, Terry.
Hello and welcome to Business News. 4 African finance ministers have asked the G20 to reallocate at least $30 billion of new money from the International Monetary Fund towards investment on the continent. In an open letter to the leaders of the group of 20 leading economies, the finance ministers from Nigeria, Ghana, the Democratic Republic of Congo and Ivory Coast say this would help African countries battle the effects of COVID-19 pandemic and climate change. The finance ministers also expressed the need to accelerate the disbursement of the IMF special drawing rights to forestall the current emerging market liquidity crisis. The IMF is taking steps to implement a new $650 billion allocation, the largest ever of its reserve currency, and the process is expected to be completed in August this year. Nigeria's equities market failed to close higher in today's trading session. Profit taken in consumer goods shares could not help the market sustain its weak gain. Laddie Williams has the summary.
Hello and welcome to the Stock Market Report. I'm Laddie Williams. And the bears back again for the second time this week, biting a huge chunk of the all-share index, down over 1%. Airtel Africa took a beating, down over 9%, leading the losers counter, while FTN Cocoa Processors led the gainers counter, up 9.68%. Let's take a look at the activity charts. Market cap lost the 20 billion mark, with 241 million units traded in 3,821 deals worth 2.8 billion naira, which is an uptick of 10.55% compared to yesterday's session. Over to the sectoral chart, all sectors are down except for the industrial sector, while the trio of GTCO, Dangote Cement, and Zenith Bank led the top trades by value, with GTCO also leading the top trades by volume counter. Well, it's the final trading day of the week, with profit taking happening in the last 2 trading sessions. Let's see what next week holds. And that's the Stock Market Report. I'm Laddie Williams. It's back to you.
We'll see if that changes next week. Meanwhile, major stocks indices in the United States rallied to record closing highs today as sector rebounded after sell-offs yesterday. Let's see the closing numbers for Friday. Tonight. Thank you for watching. I'm Anne Nwawadu. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. It's back to you, Marachi.
Banking, so easy, so simple. Dial *894# now to experience it. You first, First Bank.
Thanks a lot. And Haitian police have paraded a group of 28 foreigners, 26 of them Colombians and 2 Haitian Americans, as suspects in the assassination of President Jovenel Moïse at his home in Port-au-Prince. Bloodied and bruised, arrested suspects were shown to the media on Thursday, along with a slew of seized weapons. It is still unclear who organized the attack and with what motive. Simon Pusey has more international news and around the world in 5.
Good evening and welcome to the Channel Studios here in London with your international news around the world in 5. Haitian police say a foreign hit squad made up of 28 soldiers assassinated President Jovenel Moïse earlier this week. Most of them were detained after a gun battle at a house in the capital Port-au-Prince, where they were holed up. Bloodied and bruised, suspects were paraded in front of the media, along with a number of seized weapons. 8 more suspects are still on the run, while 3 others were shot dead by police. Claude Joseph has taken command of the Haitian government, despite rival claims to his leadership. A factory fire in Bangladesh has killed 52 people and injured 30 more in an industrial town near the capital Dhaka. The blaze broke out on Thursday night at a ground floor of the juice factory Hashem Food and Beverage in the city of Rupganj. Casualty numbers could still rise as many workers are unaccounted for. Such accidents in factories, many of which operate illegally and without proper fire safety measures, are common in Bangladesh. An investigation has been launched after all 9 people on an airplane carrying skydivers that crashed in Sweden were pronounced dead. The plane was carrying 8 skydivers and a pilot when it crashed close to the runway at Örebro Airport west of Stockholm. The crash is thought to have happened as the plane was taking off. The Taliban have captured a major border crossing point between Afghanistan and Iran, that's according to Afghan officials. Video footage appears to show Taliban forces taking down the Afghan flag from the roof of the border customs house. The Islam Kala crossing is one of the biggest trade gateways into Iran. Footage has been released of a Taliban official saying they made no promise to the US not to attack Afghan infrastructure. Russia's foreign ministry says the Taliban now controls 2/3 of the Afghan-Tajik border. The Olympic torch relay has arrived in Tokyo only to be moved to a small-scale stage instead of public roads. Torch relay runners performed the so-called torch kiss, in which the Olympic flame is passed on a stage as a small crowd of spectators confined to friends and family of the participants watched. The Japanese government has declared a state of emergency for Tokyo, and the Olympic minister has announced the Games will be held without spectators. Tropical storm Elsa has battered the US East Coast, causing floodwaters after killing at least 1 person in Florida and generating a tornado in Georgia. Elsa pummeled the tri-state region of New York, New Jersey and Connecticut and forced police to rescue more than a dozen motorists stranded on the major Deegan Expressway because of floods. Footage shows cars sitting in floodwaters that came to the tops of the tyre wheels and people attempting to walk in knee-deep. In Upper Manhattan, a witness shot video of the flooding at an intersection next to a subway entrance. South Sudan, the youngest nation in the world, is celebrating its 10th anniversary. South Sudan gained its independence from neighbouring Sudan on the 9th of July 2011, but a decade later, the country is still seeing fighting that has killed hundreds of thousands and displaced millions. The economy is still weak and the country is still fighting extreme poverty. The World Health Organization's Africa chief has said the continent has seen its worst week of COVID-19 yet. He warned that the worst is yet to come, with almost 5.7 million cases and more than 146,000 recorded deaths. A third wave of the coronavirus pandemic is gaining speed, with the Delta variant mainly to blame. And finally, British entrepreneur Richard Branson says he hopes one day the public can venture with him for recreational trips into space. The founder of Virgin takes his first flight to space on Sunday on his Virgin Galactic spacecraft. The mission, being dubbed Unity 22, will take Mr. Branson and his crew 300,000 feet above Earth into space. By joining the flight on July the 11th, Branson has positioned himself to beat rival entrepreneur Jeff Bezos into space by 9 days.
I've been looking forward to it for 17 years. I only allowed myself to get excited about 2 or 3 days ago when a guy in charge of engineering rang me up and said every box has been ticked. We've all as a team are now getting very excited. Right behind me, the mothership, the spaceship, literally half an hour ago mated with the mothership. They're still finishing that off. So every bit about it is a pinch me moment.
And that's your international news around the world in 5. Now back to the Channel Studios in Lagos.
Many thanks, Simon. Defending champion Novak Djokovic needed all of his wit and quality to edge past Denis Shapovalov and secure a place in the men's singles final at Wimbledon. Shapovalov played superbly for the most part, only for Djokovic to claim the key moments on his way to a 7-6, 7-5, 7-5 win. He will face Italy's Matteo Berrettini in the final on Sunday. Meanwhile, Matteo Berrettini has become the first Italian to reach the Wimbledon men's singles final after a dominant victory over Poland's Hubert Hurkacz. The 25-year-old used his powerful forehand to great effect with a 6-3, 6-love, 6-7, 6-4 win. Berrettini, who is the first Italian man to reach a Grand Slam final since 1976, will play top seed Novak Djokovic in Sunday's showpiece. And UEFA President Alexander Ceferin believes the format for Euro 2020 is unfair and insists it will not be repeated at future tournaments. Ceferin confirmed he was not a fan of the format. Some complain about the structure of the tournament, which offers home advantage to some sides and not to others. And that's sports news.
Thanks, Ayatunde. And the main news again. More than 10 people were killed today in separate attacks in 3 local government areas of Kaduna State as parents of kidnapped Bethel Baptist School students seek divine intervention for the rescue of their children. 6 persons were also killed by bandits this afternoon in Maradun local government area of Zamfara State. That is the news at 10 tonight. Thanks for watching. I'm Amarachi Ubani. Good night and stay safe.